Hey everyone, welcome back to the Book Summary Podcast. Today we are going to dive deep into this book you shared, The Compound Effect. And I have to say I'm really excited about this one. If you're new here, hit our like button and subscribe because we break down awesome books like this all the time. So this book, it's all about how these tiny everyday choices can snowball into massive, massive results over time. And believe me, the examples in here are seriously eye-opening. We're talking like how that daily latte habit, that one, could actually be costing you like thousands in the long run. Or why just walking a little bit more each day, even a tiny bit, can lead to major life changes. And apparently Dr. Oz is a big believer in that one. But here's the thing. It's not just about the good habits, right? Those tiny bad choices we make, well, those can compound too, creating this ripple effect across all areas of our lives, relationships, career, you name it. It's kind of mind-blowing when you really think about it. Luckily, we've got our expert here who can help us unpack all of this. They are amazing at explaining like the why behind all these crazy concepts.
The compound effect, it really highlights the power of consistency and how even seemingly insignificant actions can have this, profound impact over time. It's like that old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day, right?
It really makes you think twice about those little choices we make, without even realizing it. Like, what if grabbing that extra cookie every day actually adds up to pounds on the scale a year from now?
Exactly. The book does a great job of illustrating this with the story of these three friends, Brad, Scott, and Larry. Just regular guys living their lives. And then Skip decides to make a few just small changes, like cutting out 125 calories a day and walking a little bit more.
And I was just blown away by the results. Scott ends up losing something like 33 pounds over a couple of years, just from the tiny, tiny tweaks. Brad, on the other hand, he kept indulging in those bad habits. Well, let's just say things didn't go so well for him.
What's interesting, though, is that it wasn't some, crazy diet or extreme workout plan that made the difference for Scott. It was the consistency. Those small changes just compounded over time. And I think that's a really empowering message, It means we don't have to make these drastic, unsustainable changes to see big results.
Yeah, it's like we can all find a way to cut out 125 calories or walk a little bit more, right? But it's sticking with it day after day. That's what makes the real difference.
Absolutely. It's not about perfection. It's about making progress, even if it's just a little bit at a time.
This is why you need to subscribe to the Book Summary Podcast.
Yeah.
Because we go through and break all this awesome stuff down for you. Now, here's where things get even more interesting. The book also talks about how we are 100% responsible for our lives. No blaming traffic, bad luck, or anyone else for our circumstances. I know that sounds kind of harsh, but stick with me here.
It is a big idea. But the idea is that taking radical responsibility for our lives, even the things that seem outside of our control, well, it empowers us to make changes instead of feeling like a victim of our circumstances, We become the architects, of our own destiny.
They actually tell this really inspiring story about Kathleen. She's like this assistant who decides to take control of her finances. Starts by saving just 10% of her income. Which doesn't sound like much, but over time, it adds up to some serious wealth.
It's a great example of how taking ownership, even in just one small area of our lives, can lead to significant changes. And the book, it even breaks down this whole concept of luck, suggesting that it's not, just some random force, but rather a combination of preparation, attitude, opportunity, and action.
So it's not just about being in the right place at the right time. It's about creating the conditions for good fortune to flow into our lives. I don't know about you, but I find that incredibly empowering.
It definitely shifts our perspective, from feeling helpless to feeling like we have agency, in shaping our own outcomes.
It's a huge mindset shift. Okay, before we move on, I just want to remind everyone to hit that like button and subscribe to the Book Summary Podcast. That way you won't miss out on any of our future deep dives. So one of the concepts that really resonated with me was this habit blueprint. It basically explains how habits, they grow stronger over time, like a tree planting its roots, deeper and deeper.
The book uses that analogy to illustrate why breaking bad habits can be so challenging and why it's so important to install good ones early on. Think about it, pulling up a young sapling, that's pretty easy, right?
Yeah.
But try uprooting a mature oak tree. Good luck with that.
Right. So the longer we engage in a particular behavior, the more ingrained it becomes, in our neural pathways. And the harder it is to change.
Yeah. It's like we're literally wiring our brains for those behaviors. And the book talks about this thing called the instant gratification trap, where we often prioritize immediate pleasure over long-term gains, even when even when we know it's not in our best interest.
So it's that piece of cake that tastes amazing now, but could contribute to, like, health problems down the road, or hitting that snooze button for a few extra minutes of sleep, even though we know we'll be rushing around stressed out later.
Exactly. And we've all been there, right? The key is to become aware of these patterns and develop, strategies for overcoming them.
And the book actually offers some really practical techniques for installing good habits and breaking free from those pesky bad ones, like finding your why power, which is basically identifying a strong motivation that makes it easier to stick with those new habits.
They tell this great story about Beverly, a woman who was determined to train for a half marathon, despite being, significantly overweight. Her why power was her desire to be fit and healthy for her upcoming high school reunion.
And that motivation fueled her throughout her training, even when things got tough.
It's amazing how a powerful why can make all the difference in our ability to stick with, challenging goals. And the book also talks about the importance of identifying and eliminating negative influences in our lives.
Because let's face it, we all have those people or things that
Right.
drag us down, whether it's, that friend who's always negative, or that constant stream of social media that leaves us feeling, inadequate.
It's about being mindful of the information we consume, the people we surround ourselves with, and the environments we inhabit. And sometimes, that means making tough decisions to distance ourselves from those negative influences.
Which can be hard, but ultimately it's about creating a positive and supportive ecosystem for growth.
It's about choosing our associations wisely and surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us and inspire us to be our best selves.
And the book suggests a really cool approach to breaking bad habits. Instead of, just trying to quit cold turkey, they recommend adding in positive habits. So rather than focusing on what you're giving up, you're focusing on what you're gaining.
It's like replacing that bag of chips with a bowl of fruit, or swapping out that mindless scrolling on social media for reading an inspiring book.
And the cool thing is, by focusing on adding in the good stuff, those bad habits often start to just fall away naturally.
It's a more gentle and sustainable approach to behavior change.
I love that. This deep dive is seriously packed with great insights, and we're just getting started. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more book summaries that will inspire you to take action. Now let's move on to another crucial aspect of the compound effect: routines and momentum.
Successful people, they don't just rely on willpower, They create systems and routines that make good habits automatic.
It's about building a structure for success. And the book shares some really interesting insights from, like, top performers like Jack Nicklaus, the legendary golfer, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, highlighting how their meticulous pre-performance routines contributed to their, incredible achievements.
And these routines, they weren't about superstition. They were about priming their minds and bodies for peak performance.
It's like creating a mental and physical checklist.
Yeah.
That sets you up for success.
Exactly. By having, a structured routine, we reduce decision fatigue and free up mental energy to focus on the task at hand. It's about automating those good habits, so we don't even have to think about it, making it easier to stay consistent, over time.
So it's not about relying on willpower alone, which could be, fleeting, but rather about creating a system that supports our goals. And the book actually encourages listeners to create their own pre-shot routine for success, outlining some key elements to consider.
One crucial aspect is our environment. Is it conducive to focus and productivity, or are we constantly battling distractions?
Right. And it's also about setting clear intentions for the day, defining our top priorities, and creating a plan to stay on track.
And let's not forget about, physical well-being. Are we getting enough sleep, fueling our bodies with nutritious foods, and incorporating movement into our day? All of these factors, they play a significant role in our energy levels, our mood, and our ability to, perform at our best.
It's all connected. And one thing that really stood out to me was the book's emphasis on the importance of having a solid morning routine. I know. Mornings can be rough. But the idea is that a morning routine, it sets the tone for the entire day.
By starting our day with intention and purpose, we create positive momentum that can carry us through, even the most challenging tasks.
And to illustrate this point, our expert is even going to share their personal morning routine with us.
Well, I wouldn't say it's extraordinary, but it's what works for me. I I try to wake up before the rest of the household is stirring. This quiet time allows me to center myself and focus on what's important for the day ahead.
That sounds incredibly peaceful. What other things do you incorporate into your morning routine?
I usually start with a short meditation or mindfulness practice. It helps clear my head and cultivate a sense of, gratitude. Then I move on to some light exercise, whether it's a brisk walk, yoga, or some stretching.
I've heard so many successful people say that exercise is a key part of their, morning routine. It gets
Yeah.
the blood flowing, energizes the body and mind, and sets the stage for a productive day.
Exactly. After my workout, I make sure to nourish my body with a healthy breakfast. Skipping breakfast is a big no-no for me. I need that fuel to power through my morning.
Okay, I have to admit I'm more of a grab-and-go breakfast person, but you're inspiring me to put a little more, thought into my morning fuel.
Well, even small tweaks can make a big difference. And finally, before diving into work, I take a few minutes to review my schedule and prioritize my tasks for the day.
That's a great strategy for staying organized and
Yeah.
focused. I love how your morning routine incorporates physical, mental, and emotional well-being. It's a holistic approach to setting yourself up for a successful day.
I've found that by consistently following this routine, I'm more productive, more focused, and more resilient, in the face of challenges.
It's a testament to the power of routines. And that wraps up part 1 of our deep dive into the compound effect. Make sure you're subscribed to the Book Summary Podcast so you don't miss part 2, where we'll continue exploring this amazing book.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the compound effect. Let's pick up where we left off, exploring how these seemingly small actions can create these huge ripples over time.
One of the things that really struck me was how the book emphasizes that we don't have to make these radical overnight transformations. It's all about those tiny, consistent actions that accumulate over time.
It's easy to get caught up in this idea that we need to make these, big sweeping changes to see results. But the reality is that sustainable change, it often happens, gradually, one small step at a time.
It's kind of like building a house, right? You don't start with the roof, you lay the foundation, brick by brick.
Exactly. And each brick, each small action, it contributes to the overall structure. And as we continue to lay those bricks, day after day, we eventually create something remarkable.
And the book, it provides some really practical strategies for applying this principle to our lives. Like, remember the story of those 3 friends, Brad, Scott, and Larry. Scott's success, it wasn't about some magical weight loss secret, It was about making small, sustainable changes to his diet and exercise routine and sticking with them consistently.
Consistency is key. And I think one of the things that often, trips people up is this idea of willpower. We rely on willpower to push us through, but willpower is a finite resource. It gets depleted.
So it's like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why the book emphasizes the importance of, creating systems and routines that automate good habits, making it easier to stay consistent without having to, constantly rely on willpower.
And that's where the idea of momentum comes in, right? Once we get the ball rolling, it becomes easier to keep it moving.
Exactly. It's like pushing a car. It takes a lot of effort to get it moving initially, but once it, gains momentum, it requires less force to keep it going. And the same principle applies to our habits.
Okay, so how do we actually create that initial momentum, especially when it comes to, breaking those deeply ingrained bad habits?
Yeah. Well, the book suggests starting small. Don't try to, overhaul your entire life in one fell swoop. Instead, focus on making one small change at a time. And as you experience success with that small change, it builds your confidence and motivates you to, to keep going.
So instead of trying to cut out sugar, caffeine, and alcohol all at once, maybe you just start with cutting back on sugary drinks.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of celebrating those small wins along the way. Each victory, no matter how small, it reinforces your commitment to the process.
It's like those little rewards you get in a video game, right? They keep you motivated to keep playing and level up.
Precisely. And as you continue to make progress, those small wins, they start to accumulate. And you begin to experience, the compound effect in action.
It's amazing how these tiny little adjustments can create such a ripple effect over time. But But let's be real, breaking bad habits can be tough, even when we're super motivated. What are some strategies for dealing with those moments when we feel like giving up?
Well, the book talks about the importance of, having a strong why power behind your goals, like Beverly's determination to be fit and healthy for her reunion. When things get tough, reminding yourself of that deeper reason for making the change can, they can help you push through.
So it's like having that internal cheerleader,
Exactly.
reminding you why you started in the first place.
Exactly. And another powerful strategy is surrounding yourself with a supportive community, people who encourage you and uplift you.
Because let's be honest, negativity can be contagious, right?
Yeah.
If you're constantly around people who are, complaining or doubting themselves, it's going to be harder to stay motivated.
Absolutely. The book emphasizes the importance of, choosing our associations wisely, surrounding ourselves with individuals who, who embody the qualities we aspire to cultivate in ourselves.
It's about seeking out those mentors, role models, and friends who inspire us to be our best selves. And
Yeah.
and on the flip side, it's also about having the courage to, distance ourselves from relationships that are no longer serving our highest good.
Sometimes that means, setting boundaries, having difficult conversations, or even letting go of relationships that are holding us back.
It's not always easy, but ultimately it's about, creating a positive and supportive ecosystem for growth.
Yeah.
And this idea of eliminating negative influences extends beyond our personal relationships, right? The book also talks about being mindful of the information we consume and the environments we inhabit.
Absolutely. It's about taking control of our media consumption, being selective about what we allow into our minds, and creating, physical spaces that support our well-being.
So instead of mindlessly scrolling through social media or watching the news, maybe we choose to read an inspiring book, listen to an uplifting podcast, or spend time in nature.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about making, conscious choices that nourish our minds and spirits.
If you're enjoying this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more insightful book summaries.
Yeah.
This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the compound effect. Okay, one thing that really stood out to me was the book's emphasis on the power of routines. They actually suggest creating a pre-shot routine for success, kind of like athletes do before a big game.
And these routines, they're not about superstition. They're about priming our minds and bodies for, for peak performance by having a structured sequence of actions. We reduce decision fatigue and free up mental energy to focus on, the task at hand.
So instead of wasting time and energy trying to decide what to do first, we already have a plan in place.
Yeah.
And our brains are wired to just go through the motions.
Exactly. It's about automating those good habits so they become second nature.
And the book outlines some key elements to consider when creating our own pre-shot routine. One thing they highlight is the importance of setting clear intentions for the day.
It's about asking ourselves, what do I want to accomplish today? What are my top priorities? And then creating a plan to stay focused on those goals.
Because it's easy to get sidetracked, right? Especially in today's world where distractions are constantly vying for our attention.
Absolutely. Another important element of a pre-shot routine is creating, a conducive environment for success. Are you surrounded by, by clutter and chaos?
Yeah.
Or have you created a workspace that promotes, focus and productivity?
Right, because our physical environment can have a huge impact on our mental state and our ability to concentrate.
It's like those outer distractions become, inner distractions. And this extends to our digital spaces as well. Are we constantly bombarded by, by notifications, emails, and messages? Or have we created systems and boundaries to manage our digital lives and minimize distractions?
It's so easy to get caught up in that constant stream of digital input.
Yeah.
But it can be incredibly draining and unproductive.
The key is to be intentional about how we manage our technology, and to create, digital environments that support our focus and well-being.
I'm a big fan of turning off notifications, setting specific times to check email,
Yeah.
and even having digital detox periods where I completely disconnect from technology.
Those are great strategies, and it's not just about eliminating those external negative influences. It's also about becoming aware of our own, you know, internal dialogue, that little voice in our heads that can sometimes be our own worst critic.
Oh, I know that voice all too well. It's the one that tells us, we're not good enough or smart enough or capable enough.
And that negative self-talk, it can be incredibly destructive. It can erode our confidence, sabotage our efforts, and keep us stuck in, in self-limiting beliefs.
So how do we combat that inner critic?
The book, it talks about the importance of cultivating, self-awareness and developing a practice of mindfulness. By becoming more attuned to our thoughts and feelings, we can start to notice those negative thought patterns as they arise and choose to challenge them.
It's like we become observers of our own mind.
Yeah.
Able to step back and question those negative thoughts rather than, getting swept away by them.
Exactly. And instead of just accepting those negative thoughts as truth, we can start to replace them with more positive and affirming beliefs.
It's a process of rewiring our brains for success. Both internally and externally.
It's about creating, an ecosystem for growth, both within ourselves and in our surroundings.
And one of the key elements of that ecosystem is momentum, right?
Yes.
The book it emphasizes that once we get the ball rolling, it becomes easier to keep it moving.
Absolutely. It's that snowball effect we talked about earlier. And the beauty of the compound effect is that it works both ways. Just as small positive actions can compound over time to create, incredible results. Small negative choices can also accumulate and create a downward spiral.
So it's almost like we have this choice point.
Yeah.
Every day, every moment. Are we making choices that move us closer to our goals or further away from them?
And it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware of those choices and making adjustments as needed, because even small course corrections made consistently over time can lead to, significant changes in our trajectory.
It's empowering to know that we have that power to steer our own ship even when it feels like we're caught in a strong current.
Exactly. And remember, we don't have to do it alone. Seeking out mentors, coaches, or accountability partners can provide, support, guidance, and encouragement along the way.
It's like having that extra boost of wind in our sails, helping us navigate those challenging waters and stay on course.
And don't underestimate the power of celebrating those milestones along the way, acknowledging how far we've come and recognizing the progress we've made, no matter how big or small, can fuel our motivation and keep us inspired to keep going.
It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination. And as we wrap up part 2, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the concept of taking 100% responsibility for our lives. It's a powerful idea, but it can also feel kind of overwhelming.
It's definitely a paradigm shift for many people, and it doesn't mean blaming ourselves for everything that happens. It's more about acknowledging that we have agency in how we respond to life's challenges, and that we have the power to make choices that move us closer to our goals.
So it's not about dwelling on the past or beating ourselves up for mistakes. It's about, focusing on what we can control in the present moment.
Yeah.
And making choices that align with our desired outcomes.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that while we can't always control, external circumstances, we can control our thoughts, our actions, and our responses.
This has been such a great conversation. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll continue to unpack the power of the compound effect. Don't forget to subscribe to the book summary podcast so you don't miss out. All right, welcome back to part 3 of our deep dive into the compound effect. We've covered so much already, from those tiny habits that snowball into massive results to the importance of routines, and of course taking 100% responsibility for our lives.
It's amazing, isn't it, how all of these seemingly small things can add up to create these profound shifts in our lives over time.
But here's the thing: we're living in a world that is just constantly bombarding us, right? With distractions, negativity, temptations, you name it. Things that can easily derail our progress. How do we stay focused and on track when there's just so much vying for our attention?
Well, the book actually addresses this directly. It talks about the importance of eliminating those negative influences. And this goes beyond just, those toxic people we might encounter out there in the world. It's also about, being mindful of the information we consume, the environments we create for ourselves, and even our own internal dialogue.
So it's like we need to be the curators of our own experiences, right?
Right.
Choosing what we allow into our mental and physical spaces.
Exactly. And it starts with being aware of those, those subtle negative influences that we might not even realize are holding us back.
Okay, so give me an example. What are some of those sneaky negative influences that we might need to be on the lookout for?
Well, think about, your media consumption. Are you
Yeah.
are you constantly scrolling through, social media feeds that leave you feeling like inadequate or anxious, or maybe you're glued to the news, absorbing this constant stream of negativity and, fear-mongering.
It's so easy to get like sucked into that 24/7 news cycle, right?
Right.
But it's rarely uplifting.
Right. And it's not about, burying our heads in the sand
Yeah.
or ignoring what's happening in the world. It's about being mindful of, how much exposure we're getting to that negativity and making conscious choices to balance that with positive and inspiring content.
So maybe instead of starting the day by scrolling through social media or watching the news, we choose to read a few pages from an inspiring book, or listen to an uplifting podcast.
Exactly. It's about actively shaping our mental environment, and it's also about being mindful of the physical spaces we inhabit.
It's funny. I never really thought about how my physical environment could impact my productivity and well-being until I read this book.
It's amazing how our surroundings can subtly influence our mood and behavior. Imagine trying to focus and be productive in a cluttered, chaotic space versus a clean, organized, and aesthetically pleasing environment.
It's a night and day difference. I know for me, if my workspace is a mess, my mind feels like cluttered too.
Yeah, it's like those outer distractions become, inner distractions. And this extends to our digital spaces as well. Are we constantly bombarded by, notifications, emails, messages, or have we created like systems and boundaries to manage our digital lives and minimize distractions?
It's so easy to get caught up in that constant stream of digital input, but it can be incredibly draining and unproductive.
The key is to be intentional about how we manage our technology and to create digital environments that support, our focus and well-being.
I'm a big fan of turning off notifications, setting, specific times to check email, and even having digital detox periods where I completely disconnect from technology.
Those are great strategies. And it's not just about eliminating those external negative influences. It's also about becoming aware of our own, internal dialogue, that little voice in our heads that can sometimes be our own worst critic.
Oh, I know that voice all too well. It's the one that tells us we're not good enough or smart enough or capable enough.
Right. And that negative self-talk, it can be incredibly destructive. It can, erode our confidence, sabotage our efforts, and keep us stuck in, self-limiting beliefs.
So how do we combat that inner critic?
Well, the book, it talks about the importance of cultivating self-awareness and developing a practice of mindfulness by becoming more attuned to our thoughts and feelings. We can start to notice those negative thought patterns as they arise and choose to challenge them.
It's like we become observers of our own minds, able to step back and question those negative thoughts rather than getting swept away by them.
Exactly. And instead of just accepting those negative thoughts as truth, we can start to replace them with more positive and affirming beliefs.
It's a process of rewiring our brains for success, both internally and externally.
It's about creating an ecosystem for growth, both within ourselves and in our surroundings.
And one of the key elements of that ecosystem is momentum, right? The book, it emphasizes that once we get the ball rolling, it becomes easier to keep it moving.
Absolutely. It's that snowball effect, we talked about earlier. And the beauty of the compound effect is that it works both ways. Just as small positive actions can compound over time to create, incredible results, small negative choices can also accumulate and create a downward spiral.
So it's almost like we have this choice point,
Yeah.
every day, every moment.
Yeah.
Are we making choices that move us, closer to our goals or further away from them?
And it's not about being perfect. It's about being aware of those choices and making, adjustments as needed, because even small course corrections made consistently over time can lead to significant changes in our trajectory.
It's empowering to know that we have that power to steer our own ship, right?
Yeah.
Even when it feels like we're caught in a strong current.
Exactly. And remember, we don't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
Seeking out mentors, coaches, or accountability partners can provide, support and guidance and encouragement along the way.
It's like having that extra boost of wind in our sails.
Yeah.
Helping us navigate those challenging waters and stay on course.
And don't underestimate the power of celebrating those milestones along the way, acknowledging how far we've come and recognizing the progress we've made, no matter how big or small. It can fuel our motivation and keep us inspired, to keep going.
It's about focusing on the journey, not just the destination.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the compound effect, I'm curious to hear what's resonating most with you. What are some of the key takeaways that you will be taking with you?
For me, it's the reminder that success, it's not an overnight phenomenon. It's the result of consistent effort applied, over time. It's about showing up every day, making those small choices that align with our goals, and trusting that those small actions will eventually lead to extraordinary results.
It's a powerful message of hope and possibility, isn't it? It means that we all have the potential to achieve greatness, regardless of our starting point.
And it's about remembering that the journey is just as important as the destination. It's about embracing the process of growth, learning from our mistakes and celebrating, those small victories along the way.
Well said. This has been such an incredible conversation. The Compound Effect, it's a book that I think, everyone should read. It's a blueprint for creating, lasting change, achieving our goals and living a more fulfilling life.
It's a reminder that we have more power than we often realize to shape our own destinies. One small choice at a time.
And that's a wrap on our deep dive into the compound effect. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more insightful book summaries and conversations that will inspire you to take action and create the life that you truly desire. Thanks for joining us.